Hello, everybody. Welcome to AviaDev SkyHeroes, our aviation talk show. This is the special edition, the Christmas edition, the last episode of 2021. And again, I'm glad to welcome all of our original Sky Heroes, the three wise men, John Grant, Joergen, Elnaes, and Max Oldorf. Guys, if you can join me here, would be fantastic. Before you all do that, let me do a quick housekeeping. As always, it's just the four of us who can share our microphones and videos, but welcome everybody who is with us, joining us. Of course, feel free to use the Q&A and the chat to ask questions, to raise comments. We want to make it as interactive as possible. And at the end of this, after an hour or so, we have a short aviation quiz for all of you. So welcome, chaps. How is it going? Welcome, John.
Hi, yeah, it's going well. It's never boring, is it?
Yeah, hi Hans, you're the only one today joining me in a special Christmas outfit. I have you in a little light in here. Yeah, it works.
I thought that since I'm the man who is closest to Santa Claus original air base in the North Pole, I thought I should dress up like him and try to be some kind of good Santa for the aviation for next year.
Exactly. Hi Max, welcome as well.
Hello there. How are you
guys?
You
in snowy Switzerland or in?
I'm in gray and dark Switzerland. There's no snow. Just but I've been to a part yesterday where there was snow, but yeah, it doesn't help. I'm from that perspective, I'm not very Swiss. I like sun and 30 degrees. So,
of course, yeah. We are going to talk a lot about the whole year, not just about the recent events, but the whole 2021. And I want to kick off with a memory I just realized before we started. In my time when I was still at the airport, for 3 years we had one CEO. It was, I think, 2012 to 2015, and I was involved also in writing the annual report. And every time there was like introduction in the annual report, and I always tried to be creative, always tried to make it a little bit different. But every single year, the guy came with the sentence, "Another challenging year for aviation industry." And we are talking about 2020, 12, 13, 14, 15. Of course, there are always some challenging, but I think it would be a massive understatement if you would call 2021 as challenging year for the industry. If you could use just one word for 2021 in aviation, what word that would be, John?
Messy. I think, it's, if we're trying to be positive, and we need to be positive, this 2021 is a year of two halves. The first half of the year was truly awful. Worse than I think anyone expected. The second half of the year, until the third week of November, was looking pretty good. Capacity was up 40%. Demand was, really, really strong. The US had opened. So I think it's just messy, confusing, so frustrating for everyone.
Yeah, Max, how about you? What one word would you use?
Let's say diverse, because we are always looking at this from a passenger airline, passenger transportation perspective. If you are a cargo airline, or you're in the cargo business, or you actually are a bizjet operator or something like that, I think you had fantastic years. I mean, I just looked at the financial results of Atlas Air last year, and they posted a $360 million profit. So yeah, it's one word, it's unstable.
Mm-hmm. Hans, what about you?
Well, Santa Claus says that it has been improvements in 2021. It was a bad start. It picked up pretty good in the summer. It didn't turn out to be the summer that the airlines nor many others involved in the eco for aviation, but it came out not too bad. So, looking into the financial results for Q3 and looking a little bit into Q4, we see that the cash flow for some airlines are in the positive side, and even some airlines in Q3 reported operational profits. So that is, time. It's a time for improvement in Europe, in North America, in Asia. I think we haven't got that far yet. So yeah, improvement is my definition for 2021.
Nice, you're a true Santa Claus today, focusing on the positives. Messy and stable year of improvements. So let's start with the category of loser of the year. So I ask you to think about it, and it can be single organization, it can be a single individual, a person, it can be a country, it can be a destination. Who would you name as the loser of the year in terms of we still want to keep it aviation related and potentially European aviation related? So who for you, John, is the loser of the year?
I would, it's relative. They're never going to be a loser because they're so big and they're so powerful. But I think London Heathrow has lost so much credibility by pushing through a 50% increase in airport fees and charges.
Mm-hmm.
Against the backdrop of carnage for its customers. It is just the antithesis of what you would do if you were customer centric and you were looking after your customers. It is just crass. And it's all about their shareholders rather than the wider industry. And it tells you what they think about everyone else.
Yeah. What about you guys, Hans?
Yeah, in terms of supporting John, I would say I agree with him that we will see airports, the large airports. Heathrow was the first mover here, and we will see other come after to catch up with the losses for the last 2 years. But my definition for the major loser in Europe this year is the EU Commission not able to get a harmonized travel regime for the European Union. It looks good on paper in Brussels, but it really does not materialize out in each individual EU country that does actually what they think is best for themselves anyway. And that makes it a very tricky situation for the airlines to plan, to execute, to maintain their route network, and to yield, and you name it. It's a really headache. And even for all the travelers that would like to travel, it's been very messy, it's very complicated. So I get a thumbs down for the EU Commission this year.
But wouldn't you say there has been some improvement throughout the year? I mean, I wasn't really traveling in the first half of the year, but I did some flights in September, October, November, and it wasn't really that bad with the COVID pass. You have it accepted even in the UK and other countries. What would you say on that?
I would say that as long as the winds are mild, as long as there is no turbulence, there is no heat, there is no challenge for each country, things works out. But as soon as we see that there is a new situation that is a challenge for the local economy or health services, things change extremely fast. And that's something that I think the commissioners in Brussels had in mind to solve with their decisions, but it really doesn't work out when the things get tough. Then we think of ourselves, and the country thinks of themselves, and then there is a lot of losers.
Mm-hmm. Your views on that, Max? Who is the loser for you?
Yeah, I wanted, before I come up with my own loser, I actually wanted to say that I actually tend to your side a bit more. So I don't think that the EU Commission has done a terrible job. I mean, they haven't done a great job either. But compared to 2020, I think 2021 was much better, thanks to the EU Commission coming up with COVID passes and some sort of a gentleman's agreement within Europe that you don't put other countries unsolicited on some travel ban lists. Well, sorry, John, for that. I mean, the UK is just now, right now, in a really bad position. I think Germany just cut them out yesterday, while they kept Denmark with similar Omicron cases on the out.
See, that's the inconsistency of the whole thing, isn't it?
But in the end, that's much better than how it was last year. But I agree. I mean, you still have now. I'm. The moment there is more heat in the kitchen, they start to shut down, or they start to forget a bit about their European friends again. So Italy, I think I need a test now to get in, and the same happened here in Switzerland. So that is, I don't think they are the biggest loser, because I will tell you who the biggest loser is now in my perspective. But I agree, they've done an okay job. There's room for improvement. Personally, my biggest loser is actually a group, and it's the group of legacy airlines. I think the legacy airlines are the biggest losers in terms of from an economical perspective on this whole thing. They had 2020 was pretty much a level playing field before, because for everyone it was a new situation, and you had an entire year to get used to 2021 or 2022 or 2023. And I'm not sure how much you guys been in the air the last couple of months, so I'm actually completing my last flight tomorrow, and I will be at 81 flights this year, and I've taken anything like legacies, low-cost carriers, you name it, whatever there was, I've taken it, and the worst customer experience, the biggest hiccups, the biggest disruptions you had with the legacy carriers. I mean, just to give you an example, last week I was flying from Zagreb to Cologne, Eurowings. Again, no online check-in possible, long queues at the airport. I had a similar situation in August at KLM, long check-in queues in Edinburgh, almost missed my flight in Amsterdam. The entire network completely disrupted. I missed, and that happened a lot through my Amsterdam experience this summer. I missed another flight, had to stay overnight, and it all could have been totally prevented if they would have upgraded the systems, made a simple online check-in process, made a, have my document uploaded there once, make a one-stop shop. You check it once, you're done. Like Ryanair did it, or Wizz Air. I mean, if you fly Ryanair, any of the low-cost carriers, they have been so much faster and quicker in adopting. They're flying a low-cost carrier even now, almost. I mean, keep in mind, we're going into the third year of a pandemic. Flying a low-cost carrier is not much different than how flying was before pandemic. Flying a legacy is a nightmare. So, and you see it with the businesses. I mean, we're back to London Heathrow. London Heathrow increasing costs now. If you look at the home-based carrier there, British Airways, it's a huge mess. Their business is not coming back, and yeah. So for me, the legacy carriers are. I mean, I'm not saying anything that this surprise us. We all knew they are big tankers. They're hard to adapt. They have their challenges. And I just have a feeling the last 1.5 years, they haven't really done their homework. And the low-cost carriers are in such a better position for the restart. It's incredible.
But not one of them will collapse, will they? They will retrench. They'll adjust their networks.
Yeah, and we are going to, the taxpayers are bailing them out as usual.
Yeah.
That's.
If you look into the data, Max, in last week, you would see that Ryanair had approximately 2,000 flights per day. And Lufthansa Group, I think, ended around 800. So it means that Ryanair is flying more than 300,000 passengers per day. I haven't really caught up that they experience or from the media that Ryanair has a lot of problems, what you're referring to Max. And I think sometimes the legacy carriers, they have a more conservative system that doesn't work so well with new application. For example, application I know that Check Go, which is an app that does everything for you, while some airlines are using IATA Travel Pass. But it shouldn't be like to be an astrophysician to solve these easy problems, to integrate health data within the PNR or the booking that you make.
But therein lies the problem, Hans. There is at least 3, maybe 4 travel apps amongst the legacy carriers that do not talk to each other. And, if you fly with BA, you need to use this one. If you fly with Virgin, that one. Lufthansa, that one. Yeah. The industry was built on interlineability, and, we seem to have lost that ability to talk across systems and across carriers, and it's made it so difficult for everyone.
I think there's a strategic. I think there's a strategic problem here, a strategic misunderstanding. That, I mean, what we have established now within 3 years, that there's very little solidarity and there's very little, things today might be different tomorrow. So I think what you really had to do over the last couple of months, you had to become very, very agile. And the low-cost carriers just did that. They built up a business model where they don't rely on anyone else. And they are very fast in switching markets, switching, demand, supply, all these kind of things. They're very agile for that, and the legacies just can't do that, or they haven't given it a try. And I think personally, it's not. I mean, at Ryanair, Wizz Air, even there's legacies that do it. If you fly Delta, you can change everything in your booking through the app. If you have any disruption with Lufthansa, you have to call the call center in India where you wait for 2 hours. And we're in 2021. Why is that still the case? So I think there's just, these guys haven't done their homework.
Yeah, I agree with you, Max. And I think that if you look into the figures again, and Ryanair traveling around 300,000 passengers daily, and they don't have any call centers. The major things are done, digital. They have, as you probably know, I had a nice time working at the Ryanair head office some years ago, and learned how the labs, how good they are developing new products and new technology. I think that's the major force for Ryanair, for Wizz Air, for EasyJet, and they are, just throttling away from the legacy carriers, referring to what you are saying here, Max. And yeah, probably you are not the only one who experienced this.
If Ryanair, Wizz, or EasyJet were having problems, we would all know about it, because the press would be on them and the traveling public would be on them like a rash. So they've sorted this out. The rest just haven't got a clue. There's also a big difference. If Ryanair, EasyJet, Wizz Air lose money, it's their money. If a legacy loses money, well,
calls the state to get some support. Well, Lufthansa paid back quite a lot, Max. So
I just wanted to say that to be completely fair, we spoke about it with Hans on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, that who would say that a year ago that Lufthansa within a year in the pandemic, they will be able to repay all of the government support back.
Yeah, but how did they repay that money? It's not like they earned that money. They just took other debt and, exchanged that debt with. Hans is smiling there because he's from Norway, and the word for Norwegian, I think, is debt to equity, right? So, yes. So Lufthansa is not in the pockets of the German state anymore, but some dentists in Japan, which is their most preferred financing option. The Japanese JALCOs, but
that is the way it has to be, because the airlines leverage, it's been it went up from 180 billion US dollars in 2019 to 340, I think, in 2021. And this leverage, this debt, is only debt that has been acquired to keep the companies, in the air. It did not go into any assets. If you put on the leasing and so on top, the debts are much higher. So the airlines need to do what Carsten Spohr, and he's showing the way. You have to convert debt to equity, and in order to be able to compete with Ryanair, EasyJet, and Wizz Air, because they are very lean today.
Yeah, we see some comments coming in the chat. Obviously, Rita agrees with you guys. Legacy carriers are like dinosaur, moving very slowly. And there is also interesting comment from Vineet Gupta. One word for airline 2021 for me is unrealized. Everyone thought that the year of 2021 will be the year of recovery, but it didn't happen. John, I haven't seen your complete recent webinar for OAG. Yeah. What year are we talking about now when we are talking about the year of recovery?
Well, firstly, let's go back to 2021. I think we hoped that it would be the year of recovery, rather than we're really confident that it would be the year of recovery. And certainly, as I said earlier, in the second half of the year, there were some positive signs. I think we're probably going to be at 2024 before we see a return to any real sort of normality. It's not in Europe, but let me share a number with you. Passenger throughput in Singapore Changi in November was at 7% of its normal levels. It's got a huge way to go.
But that's also, you're now doing a very extreme example here, right?
No, I'm not, because you could do that in China, you could do that in Hong Kong, you could do that in Japan, you could do that in Africa. There are many markets where you can do exactly the same piece of analysis.
Okay, that's fair enough. I agree. But as I said initially, there is parts of this industry that have actually fully recovered, and and that's, we're back to this flexibility thing, right? There is guys that just sit there and we have 7% of the passengers back and everything is really bad. And then we just did an interview with Max Kovnatski from the CEO of Sun Express, and he actually said they will post a profit this year. And, you know, they're like a leisure carrier and they make their money in the summer, and the summer was good. In certain markets, the summer was actually great. And if you look at the numbers for October before Omicron hit, the numbers looked very, very promising. Yeah. I've heard from Edelweiss that was their second best summer they ever had in history. And the second best, sorry, not the second best summer, the second best October. But that is just, that's what I said initially, right? There is parts of the industry that are back where they are American domestic market.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing there is how both the legacy and the low cost have been creative in opening new city pairs and routes. And, you know, Allegiant and Frontier from 1 week to another will drop 25% of their flying. And
you have to keep in mind, John, that let's stick to some figures there now. I would support you what you said about Asia, and you know, 6-7% of the 2019 in some of the big airports. The problem with Asia is that most of those countries and airlines, they depend on international traffic, cross-border traffic, and you can exclude China, you can exclude Indonesia, you can exclude India and a few other countries, Australia and so on. The same situation is for the airlines in North America. And then we can talk about United States, we can talk about Canada, we can also include Mexico, which is a large domestic market. In the United States, they are the winners so far, unfortunately to use that word, in a pandemic. And they also got more than $50 billion in grants and support from the government in Washington. A significant part of the total, you know, support that has been given from governments to airlines around the world. And what you see referring to Max and Turkey that had a good summer, and Sun Express, and we see also some other airlines in Europe that is doing fine. I can look to my own country in Norway. We have a small regional airline called Widerøe that flies on remote airports, small airports around the coast and in the north of Norway, one of the most tough airline operations in the world. They were around #1 in daily frequencies in Europe during this pandemic. That shows something how important, you know, some airlines and some domestic market are in order to be able to recover. We also see SAS is not doing too bad in Norway. So we have to look into the different markets here. Europe is on a better way. Asia, I think, is going to be very tough. I think John could be much more in details of that if the listeners want to have more.
I mean, if we talk about Asia, the question that I have is just how long can these guys hold on to that? I mean, Thailand had to open up now just because I think they can't afford a second or a third season not happening. And then and now they have Omicron and they're in this dilemma, right? Are they going to shut down again now that they just reopened? So what is going to happen there? That will be very, very interesting. And that's something I don't feel very confident of giving a forecast.
Cathay Pacific apparently were profitable last month on the basis of their cargo operations.
Yes.
You know, but that's not going to be sustainable for an airline of that size and that fleet. They're either going to have to, you know, break out of this dilemma they have, get rid of half their aircraft, or sort out their relationship with the Chinese government, because, you know, they're between a rock and a hard place from what I can see. Who wants to transit through Hong Kong at the moment?
Yeah,
exactly.
And I mean, the same goes for all these guys that are now moving into the cargo business. How long is that? You know, I mean, that right now is a great business to be in, but the question is, how long will it sustain? And that's the problem with this pandemic. And that's I think what a lot of airlines got wrong. I think a lot of airlines still underestimated how long it will take, or how long it will take to get out, and how flexible you need to be. So a lot of them, I mean, yes, if you think the pandemic is over in half a year, then the easiest fix to your problem is you add more people to your call center in India. But if you go and under the assumption that it is staying around for another 2-3 years, it's probably the smarter thing to invest 5-6 million and get your digital COVID documents check run up and running. And the same goes with the cargo stuff. So a lot of them are flying these makeshift freighters now. When is the time to convert them back? And will actually maybe the freight rates stay where they are? Maybe it's,
well, let's put it this way, Max, that today the cargo revenue represent around 40% of the total revenue for an airline. For some airlines, even more, up from around 12-15% pre-COVID. I think that we will see, the businesses will see how efficient air cargo has been during the pandemic. And I think that that will be a game changer to improve that business, and it will become a much more important part of the revenue stream for a lot of airlines. And you also see that Airbus is now converting the nice aircraft A350 into freighters, which they also received some orders for them already. And I think we will see that new, very lean, fuel efficient, and fortunately also less emission than the old big bird 747. They will take over this market, and I think the cargo business will be good going forward.
I agree. At least probably the next 10 years. When you think about how many containers are stranded around the world with no definite date of actually being landed, the whole global infrastructure and supply chain has been compromised. The only way you're going to break that out is to find an alternate, which at the moment looks like it's cargo air.
I would like to give you a short example. It takes 1 minute. I ordered up a part from Eastern United States on Amazon on Thursday evening. Monday morning, it was hand delivered to my house in Oslo. And I could follow it through the different steps in the United States before over the pond to Germany, and then to Malmö, and then by plane to Oslo. And it costed me $100.
What, the shipping?
Premium service.
The shipping cost you $100.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so it must have been really a valuable
yeah, you must have wanted that, or either that or you've forgotten someone's Christmas present, Hans.
No, but I mean, I think speed is money going forward. And if the airlines and the integrators and the systems can absorb this, there is a huge market in small parcels. Don't have these big ones. They need more.
We live in a society of instantaneous gratification. We want it now, don't we? So, the whole supply chain was been screwed by not being able to get containers off ships and leaving boats outside California or outside Singapore. So the only solution is to pay a premium and put it on an airplane.
And guess if that could happen when Max is traveling and he doesn't have to meet this problem on every one of the 81 flights he had this year. I don't know. Why can it be solved? It must astroscience to fix these things. And it gives the confidence in the market for the clients to travel even more. No, it just hits the wall. And Max is, he's a negativist about it. But it's good to be said, because maybe some airlines listen to what you're saying today and they do some action about it.
Well, Max Oldorf Consulting Ltd.
Yeah, no, please. I don't want to. That's. I want to stay away from that as fast as possible. But I mean, I'm not a cargo guy, and I don't want to go further into the topic. The one thing that I'm not so sure is if the cargo stuff is really going to stay for 10 years. If you look at the air freight rates, and that's the interesting thing, and that's why I was wrong. I thought, okay, last year, when the first ships arrived with the masks and everything, then I thought, okay, that's it. Now the cargo rates are dropping again. These freighters are gone. And that didn't happen. But what happened is actually, we have never seen higher freight rates as of right now, as we speak, between Hong Kong and Europe and Hong Kong and North America. And that's very interesting because the freight rates between Europe and the US, for example, they have very much stabilized. And why did I bring up the cargo stuff is because that seems to be the thing that's still motivates people to invest money. If you look in Germany, you had German Airways, and they just purchased themselves an airport. They just bought Rostock Airport, and they want to turn it into a cargo hub, right? I don't know if that is a smart idea to do, but it seems to me like that might be a way forward if cargo stays around for a lot of regional airports, for example.
I think that if you're looking for the additional revenue streams we talked broadly about previous, cargo has been a bit downgraded for many years. I remember I've been involved in export of Norwegian seafood 30 years back in time, and the rate per kilo in 1986 was €1 from Oslo to South America. If you look in 2019 pre-COVID, the rate per kilo for one kilo salmon from Oslo to Far East or from Oslo to North America was about 1.2 euros. So the evolution has not been grown there. I think that will change. And I think that as better aircraft you transport the salmon with, or any seafood or any perishables, the clients are willing to pay more, because the emission that salmon or that fish or whatever need to be, curbed, and then the client will, the customer and the other in Tokyo will be willing to pay more if it gets more clean to the Japanese market. So I think that there are good money in the future for cargo.
Okay,
put a point on that.
let's turn the page. You already highlighted a couple of positive notes as well. So let's do the second category of 2021. The winners. Who are the winners of the year in European aviation, John?
Oh, low-cost airlines.
Yes.
They're just so agile, fleet of foot, quick to move, put capacity back in really quickly, stimulated the market, ticked all of the things you would want to tick if you were trying to restart a market, and they did it very well. Ryanair, probably better than anyone. Then probably Wizz. EasyJet was slow, but they were stuck in the UK, so that didn't help them. So yeah, I think low-cost airlines they've done a speedy Gonzales. They've gone past the legacies.
Yeah, but do you think it will play well for them also financially? I mean, it's of course, yeah, they're investing massively in the capacity, but as we know, the demand is far from
they create the market, and we need to think about Michael O'Leary's comment from 25 years ago. He'll give a seat away for nothing, and he'll sell you ancillary revenues.
Yeah.
And that's where they're going. Digital spend and digital marketing is where these low cost guys are so much cleverer than the legacy airlines. They will, when you look at Jet2, who were up at, I think it was about £35 per passenger on ancillary revenues before COVID, and they'll get back to that point. That's a lot of revenue that flows straight to the bottom line.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. The if you look at commercial air traffic, it's definitely low cost carriers, and there is Ryanair before Wizz, before EasyJet, from my standpoint. And in the US, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, I think in Europe, 2021 will be the first year where we will see that the low cost carriers have more than 50% of the total passenger volume on travel on the continental Europe and Scandinavia, and the legacy carriers will never reach back and take over that lead. I think that with Ryanair, EasyJet, and the others, they will just pace on and leave the legacy carriers behind forever.
Well, it's that ship has sailed years ago. If you look at the order books, there's no way for the legacies to catch up. These planes are ordered by Wizz, they're ordered by EasyJet, they're ordered by Ryanair to a large extent. And that's it. That's capacity of this factory. So even if the legacies out of a sudden say, okay, we want to catch up and we're investing like crazy, they can't. It's period.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's happiness for the markets. I mean, for the markets, for the consumer, because the cost base on these airlines, the low-cost airlines, are so low that they will be able to offer very attractive fares regardless the competitive situation, even though they become dominant. In the times when I worked in the Ryanair head office in Dublin, I think we made 1.3 billion euro net profit. And then there were quite few less airplanes and quite less. We had under 100 million passengers per year. So I mean, its volume is the key, and these guys know it. That's why Wizz Air and the owners, Indigo Partners, order all those aircraft. The same they do with EasyJet and so on. And I'm sorry, legacy carriers. The LCCs will be the winners going forward.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they're
yeah.
slightly trapped, aren't they? Because we've got all of these new carriers coming into the market in various countries throughout Europe and around the world. They're going to be more of an inconvenience to the legacy carriers than they are to the low-cost carriers. Ryanair will look at anyone who's entering the market and go, "Who are you?
Yeah.
Why do I need to bother about you?" But for the likes of IAG and Lufthansa, these new startups can be a distraction that they don't need.
Yeah, I spoke to the two CEOs of the airlines that are going to try the low-cost long-haul model in a way. The Birger Jonsson from Play, the Icelandic, they just announced a couple of days ago their first destinations in the US. Yesterday, I think it was Hans when North Atlantic landed their first 787 in Oslo. I think you were there to comment on it for Norwegian TV. So potentially in some area they might be the potential winners in 2022 in the low cost long haul.
Can someone tell me what makes Play different to WoW? Because
Please.
if it failed and the fuel price is now a lot higher than it was previously,
What makes North Atlantic out of a sudden more profitable and more successful than Norwegian long haul?
Okay, Hans,
I can answer that. Basically, it's that the cost base for Norse is incredible lower than it was for Norwegian Air International. The leasing agreements for the 15 Boeing 787, 8s and 9s that previously were used by Norwegian, that Norse now have in their fleets, are so good. And they even have, power by the hour agreement, means that they don't need to put the capacity into work because they can keep the aircrafts on the ground until the market comes back, and they don't pay any lease for it. Because
and that's all fine, right? So I mean that I right now I walk around and everyone who wants to hear it or not, I tell them now is the perfect time to start an airline because you will never ever get better lease rates. You will never start an airline again with that little money that you need right now. But the question is, it's a sustainable business model, right? And exactly. I mean, it's great to have low lease rates or power by the hour agreements now, but your business model needs to work in 3-4 years again. And I mean, the leasing companies, they're no saints, right? So the moment the markets come back and the moment the demand for 787 picks up, they're coming like, oh, you're either now paying a proper market accepted lease rate, or I'm going to give that plane to someone else. So, and that's when Norse needs to still make it work. And I was always under the impression that the Norwegian guys had a pretty good cost base actually. So,
well, we just have to finish off with Norwegian Air International before we go on there. But actually, they have paved the market for a big scale Atlantic low cost long haul travel and production, and they were not so far away to become close to profitable before the pandemic came in. The restructuring process in Norwegian started a long time before COVID-19. COVID-19 just ended it all. So, they have done a lot of work. And of course, this is something that Norse Atlantic Airways will benefit from because they know that it can work. But of course, what you say, Max, is that those leasing agreements and PBH deals, they doesn't last forever. And at some point, Norse they have to make money. And they can only make money if they have the low cost base and are able to offer fares that are less than the competitors which mainly will be the legacy carriers. I doubt we will see a major push for long-haul, low-cost carriers to be the size of North Atlantic Airways going forward the next years. But you should also keep in mind that the investment market, investors, they have been very loyal to a number of airlines during this tough period. And there was no problem for North Atlantic Airways to raise about 140 million euros from cornerstone investors in Norway and abroad in 2 hours. Not a problem at all.
Well, they better give that telephone number to Virgin Atlantic then.
Well, I guess they should call British Airways, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, the question is, isn't that stuff distracting the legacies? Because if you are the CEO of a legacy airline, and I won't name names now, but would you be more obsessed with a leisure airline that just undergoes restructuring and just got a new investor and has about 30 aging 767s, and you would create your own AOC, long-haul AOC, leisure long-haul AOC to fight them? Or would you need to be more worried about some airline in Ireland that has 10 aircraft coming off production line every month now next year, and it will just swamp Europe with their fleet? And I just have a feeling that these small, and I'm with John there, there's these smaller airlines that are really they will not change the game. They will just be there, rather weak competitors. And you can just shush them off if you want to. I just have a feeling some of the legacies are obsessed with these smaller airlines, why they don't understand where the real, I mean, they feel secure. They're sitting in their big hubs and they have their slots and they're not worried about losing them. But oh boy, if that ever changes,
Well, talking about losing, what's going to happen to the corporate market? Will that come back next year? Because for these legacy carriers, no corporate demand, or only 30, 40, 50% of corporate demand returning, they're in serious trouble.
Yeah, we're talking about VFR, visit friends and relatives, and we talk about the leisure and holiday segment. That's the growth segments going forward. We all, I think, agrees on that the corporate market, in many markets, corporate segment will never come back to 2019 levels. And that, of course, will hurt Lufthansa Group. It will hurt IAG. It will hurt KLM, Air France. It will not necessarily hurt North Atlantic Airways or Hans Air or Scoop or a number of those low-cost long-haul airlines. But as Max says, they will not have a huge impact on the total ASK offered in the markets they are flying within. So there's not a big threat, and they get maybe more attention in the media and by legacy carriers than they should. They should focus more on Ryanair in Europe. I agree on that. But
I think it's just a battle you don't have to pick. So far, there hasn't been a single low-cost long-haul airline that was sustainably profitable and sustainably great. So why bother with it until someone proves the opposite? And what I really think they should bother with is the guys that have continuously, year after year after year, record margins. And that is the guys that we talked about. And I think that's what you need to be completely obsessed about. Legacy long haul, that's low-cost long haul, that's always in the news. It's always this hype topic, but it's just like I don't even bother with it. Hans and whatever these airlines are called.
We've just had Scoot start Singapore, Bangkok, London, Gatwick. Yeah. Really, who's?
Yes,
it's just mad.
Let's turn the page again a little bit. Interesting comment. A few words maybe from you, Max, on it. Private jet operators are certainly won new customers during COVID. They are absolutely one of the winners. Lasse Schmidt says in the chat section. What do you think about that, Max? I think you're.
Well, I think they are, but it's entirely aspirational for me. I'd love to be able to take advantage of that. I mean, you hear all these stories of if there's 7 or 8 of you, it becomes close to being worthwhile, and I'm sure Max uses it every week.
Well, this is
for me,
I'm actually not I don't know what to say about, because my last flight tomorrow actually will be a private jet flight from Munich to Sonderburg.
There you
But
go.
it's like I don't do that.
Time.
No, I don't do it regularly, and it's a ferry flight I was allowed to take on. So it's literally all I have to do is give some money for the coffee for the pilots. But I mean, it's a valid topic. We've definitely I live here in Zurich next to the airport, and I see the traffic, and traffic is crazy for BizJets, and I'm not an expert in it at all. It's stable business. A lot of companies are using it. I think if you look at the smaller light jets, they are indeed, if you pack them, they are very, very competitive on business class European fares. That is one thing that I find is incredibly interesting, are these business models in the US that have been tried out. I think there was OneJet. There's a few other guys where they use business jets on high yield scheduled routes that have been abandoned by the legacies and by the majors, and they are trying to make them work by selling them like normal flights on a business class average fare. So far, no one has managed to make that a really sustainable business model, but I think the time is probably something that we will see going forward, especially if at some point we have different forms of propulsion. So it's definitely an interesting thing. But keep in mind, while the rest of the world has actually had good times and the airline industry hadn't, business jet industry has always had their good times, and then when a 2008 or whatever happens, this industry tanks as well from time to time. So I think they just have a high right now because a lot of people are making a lot of money right now, and there's a lot of money. Doesn't mean it has to stay like that. The one joke I always make is last year here in Zurich there was no traffic at all. The only guys that kept flying were the guys with their ambulance jets. So actually, I always make jokes. In my next life, I'm gonna be an air ambulance operator. I think that's safe, the safest business you can be in.
If you look into the statistics again, and what kind of segments that are really booming, is one segment that's been booming all the time, and that's the business jet segment. Never has so many business jets been flying in.
You mean now during the pandemic?
Yes, since March 2020. And you probably heard about NetJets, and there are different, programs that you can buy into and fly a number of hours and so on. They just have to scrap the lower levels because the demand is so high. The second-hand price for business jets in all categories are sky high. New bookings or new orders are from Embraer and Gulfstream, and others are never been that high before. I think we will see a shift from flying first class to fly business jets because the convenience, and I know that you have tried it, Max. I've been fortunate. I've tried it sometimes myself in business, not just on to pay for the coffee, and it's a different world. I mean, you don't have to think about anything. Everything's fixed for you. And those guys who really makes the big bucks, they don't have time to waste around in airports. So I think this is the growing market, and we will see maybe new types of business that will do this. But I'm sure that
the very interesting thing here is that actually what shifted really in the business jet market is that you had, if you look at it 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, you had a lot of smaller operators with 1, 2, 3 jets, and you're somehow seeing the same trends as you've seen it now in commercial aviation. You see that happening in the bizjet sector as well. There's one bizjet operator that runs like an airline, and I follow them for about 10 years now, because 10 years was when I first run into them. It's a small, well, they used to be a small operator in Austria called Globe Air, and they've become huge. And what they do is they have these very light jets, Cessna Citation Mustangs, and they have they pretty much have bases for them. So they have them based in Nice, they have them based in Zurich, they have them based in Geneva, wherever they see there's a lot of demand. And then when you have these bigger bases and you have 20, 30 of these planes, you have a lot of scalability effects. Your costs go down, and your competitiveness on that level goes up so badly that if you look at if you just go onto Flight Radar 24 or all the other tracking platforms and you check out what these guys are actually flying, it's staggering. Yeah. It's staggering, and they run it like an airline. They have a base there, they have their pilots there, and they're like.
But Max, there's one key point. Just 1 minute, a second, John. So one key point for business jets, and that is the environmental side. Flying, if you look at the emission per seat in a business jet compared to an A320 Neo or A350, the figures are pretty bad. So it's going to be taxed pretty high. The CO2 quota, the prices are going sky high. So it's going to be very costly to fly business jets going forward. I think those who want to do that, they will continue to do it regardless of the cost, because it's just so much more convenient, and you can plan whatever you need to do when you do negotiations in London or Hong Kong or New York, whatever you go.
Should legacy airlines buy into this sector?
Qatar Airways is doing that, Qatar Airways, they have their own business, or the owners of Qatar.
Well, Michael O'Leary at Ryanair has his own jet too, right?
Yeah.
But,
that's purely for convenience.
If you want to defend your position and you want to be able to get business that needs to travel quickly, but you want to satisfy your bigger corporate demand base, should you actually be in this space?
It's a good question. It's a very good question.
Let's leave it open for now. We have just 10 minutes to go, and I wanted to chat just a little bit about 2022. So each of you has like 3-4 minutes. Let us hear what do you think? Pick up your crystal ball and worst case scenario and best case scenario for 2022 in European aviation.
Best case is we get through Omicron by the end of January. And we pick up where we were at the end of November, and we carry on, and the summer will be really good. Worst case, of course, is that it runs through to April, May, and we see another variant next November. But we've got to learn to live with these variants. It's got to stop. The WHO has got to stop calling this a pandemic and calling it endemic, because that will change the whole way we think about this.
And what do you think is the more realistic one from the two you mentioned, based on the information we have right now? Of course, we don't know everything.
No, we don't. But, you see, the problem is, of course, the media only like to publish bad stories and scare stories. And then when you pick up the bits about what's going on in South Africa, hospitalizations are not quite as bad as I expected. Hospitalizations in the UK to date have not been as bad as people expected, but they might spike. So if it sort of all dries up and it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad, was it, chaps? Then I think we'll move on. But it's certainly spooked us all again, I think.
Mm-hmm. Max?
I'm very bold now. So I'll tell you exactly what will happen. So we'll have Omicron now, and it's so crazy that everyone, John must have it right now. He's coughing like he is in his final days.
No, I've had a lateral flow test. I am absolutely fine. It's just
they're completely useless if you ask me. But anyway,
thanks very much.
I'll tell you what will happen. So we'll have a great Christmas now with our families. After that, everyone will have Omicron. And then this thing is over, I would say, end of February. And as we've learned from the last 2 years, this thing is seasonal. So if we purely talk about Europe, March, May numbers are really, really low because pretty much everyone had it or is vaccinated. The airlines will fly like crazy, at least on the intra-European traffic. And we're actually, by July, August, we'll see lots of canceled flights because there's not enough people to run all these flights. So COVID within the industry will actually be replaced by crew shortage by the summer. And and then we'll have a great we'll have a great year. And then in November, December, we'll see if there's a new variant coming around or not. But will be a great year.
This is being recorded, so I'm looking forward to play it back in February. And
But
let's see.
Max makes a really strong point. There is just not enough resources out there to fly these pieces of metal.
And lots of people that have left said, I had enough of this.
Yeah.
And it's happening all around the world. I think in the US it's
we've seen. Look, I'm not a genius.
already.
I'm just putting scenarios together, and we had exactly that scenario this year in the US because they've just been earlier. And by August, Southwest Spirit, their flight plans and schedules just blew up. It's the same in Europe, and in Europe, because we're so unionized, I tell you what blows up. The first thing that blows up is actually air traffic, and we'll have slots and congestions and a nightmare.
Hans, your turn. Well, John and Max, you said most of it. I think we will not get rid of Omicron before end of Q1, and I think it will really stall a cold winter to be even more cold. I'm very concerned about the situation in the United States that we read this morning from the news from Reuters, the fast spread of Omicron in various big cities, New York, Washington, and so on, and how this can impact on travel policies for traffic between Europe and United States. That's a really concern. I'm not so concerned about the domestic the evolution in the United States. I think that will manage that. But if this continues, we just need to have the best summer ever. And if the best summer ever does not materialize due to the Omicron or other reasons, but if it happens, we will have a situation that Max is very correctly addressing, that we will have a lack of capacity in terms of pilots and crew. We will have lack of capacity of skilled workforce at the airports, all kind of service levels that we need in the aviation industry, because they lost their job. Many airlines, you cut the staff with 50%, and that goes for airport, that goes for third-party suppliers, that goes for, if an engine breaks down, you need spare parts and you need to get that. There's a lot of the ecosystem that is going to be hurt by this. But basically, to close up, I think if we get rid of Omicron by Q1, I think we will see some pretty good figures in Q3 and Q4. And then we just have to cross our fingers that this wave number 5 is the last wave. It's not the beginning of 5 more. And 2022 can be a good year for traffic inside Europe, North America, and so on. But on the international traffic, I think we are talking another year at least before we start to see some good light in the end of the tunnel, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hope you are all right. I heard Bill Gates saying that 2022 is the end of the pandemic because of new pills coming in who will be able to treat COVID before the hospital. So if you are into conspiracy theories, you can think whatever you want about Bill Gates, but probably he knows something about his stuff. So let's see if he's right, and let's see what 2022 will bring. But for now, let me thank you, gentlemen, for all your insights, for all your inputs, time and energy invested into SkyHeroes, not just today, but throughout the whole year 2021. Really appreciate it. I wish you all the best of health, best of luck. Merry Christmas with your loved ones, with your families, and we're not going anywhere. Hope to see you soon again in 2022.
Yeah, likewise, Juraj. Have a good Christmas.
See you around, guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
See you around.
Thanks.
Thank you very
Merry
much.
Christmas.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Happy New Year.